Ilan na? The 7th session of the Senate in the second regular session of the 16th Congress is hereby called to order. Senator J.V. Ejercito will lead the chamber in prayer. Senator Ejercito.
Magandang hapon po, Ginoong Pangulo. Panginoon, basbasan po kami ngayon. Gabayan ninyo po kami sa aming pong gawain. Naway lagi naming ilagay sa aming puso at isipan na lagi namin dapat itaas ang interes ng higit na nakarami at ipaglaban ang kanilang kapakanan. Ang lahat ng ito ay itinataas namin sa inyo sa mahal na pangalan ni Jesus. Amen.
Amen. Marami pong salamat. The Secretary will call the roll.
Roll call of members. The Honorable Senators Angara, Aquino, Binay, Cayetano Alan Peter Compañero S., Cayetano Pia S., Defensor Santiago, Ejercito, Enrile, Escudero, Estrada, Gingona, Hunasan, Lapid, Legarda, Marcos, Usmeña, Pimentel, Po, Recto, Revilla, Soto, Trillanes, Villar, Senate President Trilon.
18 senators are present. The chair declares the presence of a quorum. The majority leader.
Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense with the reading of the Journal of the 6th Session, August 11, 2014, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection?
Mr. President.
Sorry, yes, Senator
Yes.
Soto.
Mr. President, I seek clarification on the journal.
Yes, please.
If you don't mind, may I call your attention to page 102?
102.
Yes. And shall we say, I am suffering from obfuscation on what transpired. It says here that there is a manifestation of Senator Gingona manifesting that he has yielded to the request of Senator Pimentel to chair the subcommittee under the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers and Investigations, the Blue Ribbon Committee, to conduct the hearing on proposed Senate Resolution 826, directing the committee to investigate the alleged overpricing of the 11-story Makati City Hall parking building. I asked about this, and again, I am not clear on what the answer was, because I was questioning the wisdom of such. So first, is there a subcommittee under the Committee on Public Officers Investigations? Is there an existing subcommittee? The way it is worded here, there is an existing subcommittee, first. Second, there is a vice chairman of the Blue Ribbon Committee. So if the Blue Ribbon Committee, the chairman was not available and will not be hearing a certain bill or resolution, the rules say that the vice chairman takes over. In this case, when I asked Senator Gingona about it, he said Senator Pimentel requested. Now, that brings me to the next question. Can I also request that I conduct a hearing and create a subcommittee for, let's say, the Malampaya fund scam or the media killings? Can I do that also? Because apparently the issue being discussed here, Senate Resolution 826, is a local matter. It's a local issue. Now, don't get me wrong, Mr. President, because I am told by some friends of the Vice President that he is itching to have this investigated because the COA cleared him and COA cleared Makati. So They actually want it. I don't care about that. My point is, what are the procedures? And are we opening a new door? And can this be done in the future? So before we approve the journal, may it be clarified on what is the intention here and what happens here?
We have a few minutes suspension, Mr. President.
Suspended for 1 minute. Bakit hindi sinabi sa akin kagad? Ako pa ang naghahanap.
Yeah, thanks for the cupcakes. Thanks for the cupcakes. Sa taas ng office. I saw it late na eh. Thank you. Ah, yeah? What is it? It's a word home, I forgot to eat it. Thanks. Yung smiley, parang may smiley face. What is that? What's that? Wow. Parang gusto ko ngayon dun. Hirap talaga i-predict. Kaya talaga may bakla. It's in the plenary already, ba? Pinasana ng committee. What did they say? I have another hearing on that. Para ready na tayo. 75. They give it data, ilan yung will be affected. How many Filipinos are affected by the increase? Basta they get more than that. Walang indexation yun. Pasok mo yung income. Increase natin lahat. What do we add then? The indexation or the increase?
Ano may bila ko to lista? Bensa na sir, di ba?
And the minimis is the, you're talking about the cost of...
Yes, the cost of so, from the airport.
You will definitely get yours. Galing ko talaga.
I'm learning.
Backfire yan. Ayaw na nga niya hawakan.
Diba?
Ano yung resolution yan? Ano yung resolution? The session is resumed. In the meeting that, in the short, the chair rules that Senate Resolution number 826, having been referred to the Committee on Accountability of Public Officers, the issue raised by Senator Soto will be raised at the committee, at the committee hearing, because that is a matter now before the committee and not before the plenary. The committee will rule on the points raised by the acting minority leader in accordance with the rules.
Yes, Mr. President, I concur with that, as long as it is reflected in the
Yes.
journal today.
The ruling of the
Thank
chair
you.
will be reflected in the records.
So, Mr. President, with the consent of the Senate, I move that we dispense with the reading of the journal of the 6th session, August 11, 2014, and consider the same as approved.
Any objection? Hearing none, motion of the majority leader is carried.
I move that we proceed with the reference of business, Mr. President.
Secretary will read the reference of business.
Messages from the House of Representatives. Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 4 August 2014 it requested for a conference and designated Representatives Romulo Escudero, Rodriguez, Cortuna, and Pakis as its conferees to the Bicameral Conference Committee on the Disagreeing Provisions of House Number 4553 entitled An Act Expanding Access to Educational Services by Institutionalizing Open Distance Learning in Higher Education and Appropriating Funds Therefore, and Senate Number 2274 entitled An Act to Expand Access to Education through Open Learning and Distance Education in Tertiary Levels of Education, Appropriating Funds Therefore, and for other purposes.
Committee on Rules.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 4 August 2014 it adopted House Concurrent Resolution number 7 entitled Concurrent Resolution providing for the legislative calendar for the second regular session of the 16th Congress of the Philippines, in which it requests the concurrence of the Senate.
To the archives.
Letter from the House of Representatives informing the Senate that on 4 August 2014 it passed the following House bills: House Joint Resolution, House number 3675 entitled An Act Removing the Conditions for the Condonation of all unpaid taxes due from local water districts, amending for the purpose Section 289A of the National Internal Revenue Code as amended.
Committee on Ways and Means.
House number 4571, an act naming the new building owned by the Department of the Interior and Local Government located at Quezon Avenue, corner Epifanio de los Santos Avenue, Quezon City, as the Secretary Jess Robredo Building in honor of the late DILG Secretary.
Local Government.
House number 4629, an act providing for a Magna Carta of the Poor.
Social Justice, Welfare, Rural Development, Ways and Means, Finance.
House number 4630, an act establishing a Philippine high school for sports and appropriating funds therefore.
Education, Arts and Culture, Games, Amusements, and Sports.
House number 4633, an act strengthening the policy framework for the development of the sugarcane industry, establishing the Sugarcane Industry Development Fund, and reconstituting the Board of Directors of the Philippine Sugar Corporation.
Agriculture and Food, Government Corporations and Public Enterprises, Ways and Means, Finance.
House number 3522, an act rationalizing the management of the natural resources in the Camotes Islands, Province of Cebu, amending for the purpose Proclamation number 2152 dated December 29, 1981, entitled Declaring the entire province of Palawan and certain parcels of the public domain and or parts of the country as mangrove swamp forest reserves.
Environment and Natural Resources.
House number 3652, an act separating the Bakungan National High School, Palandok Annex in Barangay Palandok, Municipality of Leon B. Postigo, Province of Zamboanga del Norte, from the Bakungan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Palandok National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
House number 3653, an act separating the Bakungan National High School, Tinuyop Annex in Barangay Tinuyop, Municipality of Leon B. Postigo, Province of Zamboanga del Norte, from the Bakungan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Tinuyop National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
House Number 3654, Act separating Bakungan National High School, Talinga Annex and Barangay Talinga, Municipality of Leon B. Postigo, Province of Zamboanga del Norte, from the Bakungan National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as Talinga National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
House Number 4605, an act establishing the Alfonso Sports Academy and Training Center in the Municipality of Alfonso, 7th Congressional District, Province of Cavite, and appropriating funds therefore.
Games, Amusement and Sports, Finance.
House Number 4608, an act reclassifying parcel of land located in Barangay Dos, Baez City, Province of Negros Oriental into agricultural land for socialized housing project.
Environment and Natural Resources.
House Number 4625, an act establishing a mechanism for the sustainable development and use of the island of Boracay, Municipality of Malay, Province of Aklan, defining the mode of acquisition for certain parcels of land of the public domain classified as agricultural land open to disposition under Proclamation Number 1064 and providing environmental safeguards therefore.
Environment and Natural Resources, Local Governments.
House Number 4626, an act declaring certain parcels of land of the public domain located in Barangays Bunog, Iraan, Punta Baja, Kampong Ulay, and Ransang of the Municipality of Becepi, Rizal, Province of Palawan, as agricultural land open to disposition for agricultural, commercial, residential, industrial, and other productive purposes.
Environment and Natural Resources.
House Number 4631, an act separating the Silay National High School St. Peter Annex in Barangay St. Peter, City of Malaybalay, Province of Bukidnon, from the Silay National High School, converting it into an independent national high school to be known as St. Peter National High School and appropriating funds therefore.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
House Number 4632, an act converting the Judge Jose de Venecia Sr. Memorial National High School in Barangay Bolosan, City of Dagupan, Province of Pangasinan, into a National Technical Vocational High School to be known as Judge Jose de Venecia Sr. Technical Vocational Secondary School and appropriating funds therefore.
Education, Arts and Culture, Finance.
House Number 4643, an act reclassifying a parcel of land of the public domain located in the municipalities of Dinalupihan and Hermosa, Province of Bataan, as agricultural land open to disposition for commercial, residential, and other purposes.
Environment and
Agree, Mr. President.
Yes, I think I will agree to that, Mr. President, because the reality is many of the rank and file employees, before they become regular, will either be a probie, a contractual, and may never be regular. So kung doon pa lang, hindi natin sila mabigyan ng opportunity because they're not covered by this bill or this law eventually, then they will suffer. So I think that is an amendment that we can make at the proper time. I appreciate that input.
Thank you, Mr. President. So hopefully at the proper time we can do that, or the committee may do so, Mr. President.
Okay, I will present it to His Honor,
Thank you.
but I will include the examples he gave, probationary and contractual.
Thank you. Now on Section 4C, after 4A, 4C, I did some pencil pushing because the section defines job applicant, as it is written now, as a person
Yes.
who complied with the organization's formal recruitment practices. Does this mean that we are merely limited to juridical entities? I ask this because I was hoping that we can replace job applicant to let's say job applicant includes any person who applied for a specific and vacant position for which an employer is seeking candidates, met the predefined documented minimum requirements related to a specific open position, applied for the position during the period that the applicant flow log remained open, and who complied with the hiring employer's formal recruitment practices. Para madami lahat.
Yes,
Pwede yan.
that is a better definition, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President. Thank you for that. Let me move on now to Section 8 in that case. Section 8 enumerates all the acts penalized under the intended law. Paragraph A2 under the section prohibits requiring the declaration of age and birth date during the application process. Do I get it right? Now, does this provision also include casual questions during the interview process? If yes, would it be possible to include this so that it will be clearer that it is a punishable act under the intended law?
Well, actually, Mr. President, Section 8A2 is a item that will be wherein I will propose an amendment during the period of committee amendments because
okay.
it was brought to our attention that to check on the age would be a requirement, especially because it is not lawful to hire those who are
17 years
not
old.
those who are not of majority age. So
Yeah.
we will have to put this back.
Okay.
In any case, there
Alright,
are
alright.
we will have to delete this other. I meant delete that. In any case, there are other provisions in the bill that will ensure that despite your knowing the age, you should not use that to discriminate that person. And if His Honor would like to strengthen that, knowing that this provision will be deleted now, we are happy
Good.
to accept any proposals.
All right, we will. Thank you. That's good. Mr. President.
Lady Chair,
No,
ask a
yeah.
question. How do you propose to prove the intent of the employer that really it was by reason of age that, say, the employee was not hired or that he was prejudiced? How do you prove intent in this particular case? Because it would appear from the way I read the bill that you would punish the employer who would base his decision solely on age.
Yes,
That's the crux of this
Yes.
bill.
Yes.
There should be no discrimination solely by reason of age. So how
Yes.
do we propose to prove that in an actual case?
Yes. Well, we've thought about that, Mr. President. In fact, one of the proposals given to us was to have a presumption of guilt on the part of the employer. But I did not agree to that because that to me was too extreme. No, it's really difficult. And in this country where really the supply of labor is so high, and it's going to be extremely difficult to pinpoint that. I know that it's difficult, but from experience, what I feel this bill and hopefully law will be able to clarify for us or to settle for us are the practices where the age requirement itself is published and the applicants from the start are already not allowed to go through the application process. So that one clearly, if when they check your age and they didn't even interview you based solely on your age, then that to me already is a burden on the part of the employer.
That one is very clear when you publish that only applicants below age 25 should
Yes.
apply. That
And-
one is very clear. But on the other unlawful acts, I do not know how you can prove it.
Well, in practice now, you will also we have a lot of young people who tell us that they are told face to face that we don't hire anyone beyond this age, and then you can also see. And so I was thinking that aside from being told, so of course there will be testimony that they were told. In addition to that, you can see the makeup of the staff. That might be circumstantial evidence, but it is still evidence that could be added that they're not hiring anyone who's older and it has nothing to do with the job. So those are the practices in place that we felt we could use. It is not easy, Mr. President, but to us the biggest step here is the preventing the publication and preventing that requirement.
Because I can see that if that is the only, if that is what is sought to be prohibited, then it's really would be easily, it can easily be shown by just getting a copy of the publication, and
Yes.
and what is contained there will in fact prove
In itself.
violation of the law. But in the other instances, it's like compelling an early retirement merely because of age. No
Yes.
employer will admit.
I agree, but again, Mr. President, because I've been working on this bill for a couple of years. I've had this discussion, and I'm happy to report that I've had discussions with a few HR managers who've told me that they've already reported it to upper management. and they're already revising their hiring because a lot of them don't even realize that they've turned their whole hiring system into this age-dominated, the hiring process is so biased in terms of the younger age. So with that alone, with the law in place, or with the threat of the law with the threat of this bill to become a law, a lot of people in HR that I've spoken to have already been looking into it and are seriously thinking of how they will now change or study their existing practices.
Thank you, Sandra Soto. Thank you.
Following up the query of the Senate President, how will this work in real life? Like kung may dalawang nag-a-apply ng hamburger server, magkakakaso ba yung employer kung ang kinuha niya 25 years old
versus
na talo sa qualifications ng 50 years old?
Natalo?
Talo sa qualifications ng 50
Talo.
years old.
Yeah.
Pero kinuha niya yung 25 years old.
Well, if wala talagang basis except age, then I would say that the 50-year-old has a standing, in court. Again, I admit it's not something easy to prove, but I think one of the purposes of our passing these bills are also to set the standard that we want for this country. And I don't intend to turn the other way and say bahala na sila in court, no? But I think with this kind of labor issues, these discrimination issues are always very hard to not just age, but in a lot of discrimination cases, including the gender issue. We know of more of cases abroad where it's so hard to prove that was she really discriminated against because she's a woman. It's very similar. It's not easy, but it's a step I feel is in the right direction.
Somehow connected, yung Section 9, Section 9 comes to mind. May exceptions tayo,
Yes.
in Section 9. It is stated that age, quote, age is a bona fide occupational qualification reasonably necessary in the normal operation of the particular business, or where the differentiation is based on reasonable factors other than age, end of quote. Who decides on what is bona fide occupational qualification?
What we envision here, Mr. President, is that in the formulations of the IRR, DOLE will be consulting with different industries, and from there will come up with their own set of guidelines based on the recommendations, because we believe that we cannot set just one standard for different industries. It would be very different. No, what may be a valid distinction in a very labor intensive type of work may be very different or non-existent in something that requires more of one's intellectual capacity. So we put this burden on this a technical matter which we want DOLE to come up with after consultations.
Well, I think it's very important. That is a very important piece of
yes,
or provision that we should be very clear on, no? Whether through the IRR or if we can do it with the bill, much better in the bill.
Well, we can put in firmer guidelines. It's just that from an industry standard, we have been working with DOLE, and so far, the recommendations we have both from the Blas Ople Center and DOLE is that they are happy to work with that on a tripartite level, national government, employers, and employees, at the technical level through the IRRs. But this does not prevent us, no? If His Honor feels that it's important, I'm happy to put in some firmer guidelines for that. I just don't know if how practical it is to.
Yeah, well, let me also think about it.
And I'll have further discussions with them on this.
Okay, good. Now, I'm a little concerned about airline stewardesses. Are we going to prevent airlines from employing younger flight attendants? Because they can stand the rigors of regular flights and long flights. So what do we do about this?
Mr. President, there's nothing that will prevent an airline from hiring young flight attendants. But the existing practice really is they have a forced retirement at the age of 40. And so, for me, this is a gender issue as well. This is both gender and age.
40,
40.
Male and female?
Male and women, although it is a women-dominated profession. So, although it applies to both.
The age limit is for
40.
both male and female?
Yes, I'm told that it is the age
May
limit.
I ask the sponsor to review that answer? Because as far as I know, the age 40 as a forced retirement has long been removed from our statute
Well,
books.
not only here,
and
but-
in fact, flight attendants, you can see are beyond 40 flying today.
Yes, as a matter of fact, I'm familiar with the United Airlines.
No, even Philippine Airlines,
Philippine
Senator
Airlines,
Soto.
but United, it's more obvious in the United Airlines.
What is obvious, Senator Soto?
Some of them look like my grandmother, Mr. President.
No, but look, I'm sorry. The age 40 as an age for compulsory retirement for the flight attendants has, to my knowledge, has long been removed. And in fact, I know of flight attendants who retire at age 55.
Mr. President, it depends on the CBA. What I'm told is it depends on the CBA that was in place at the time you were an employee. So that's why I also know of those who are clearly over 40 and are still working. But what I'm also told is that the decision has been reversed. It used to be 55 for female and 60 for male. And then it was
60
reversed.
for male?
Yeah, so iba pala. Ang sinasabi dito is mas mataas yung sa male.
And then what happened to that?
And then the Court of Appeals modified this decision on June 18, 2013. Those hired before November 22, 1966, the female should be 55 and the male is 60.
Okay.
Those hired after November 22, 1996, female is 45 and male is 45. Those hired
45
after November 22, 2000, female is 40, male is 40. And those hired after July 16, 2007, female is 40, male is 40. So, yeah, it's basically what I said earlier, but this is more detailed.
Okay. Yeah.
So-
So this is the existing.
Senator Nancy Binay cannot apply anymore to become
No.
a flight
Nancy
attendant.
Binay is qualified.
But we're talking about
She's already 40.
Yeah. Actually, just for the record, we are talking about PAL.
Okay.
I don't
That's
know the
Cebu
practice.
Pacific.
I don't have it. I'm happy to put it on record. We can check what are the existing
So is that practice
in place.
now illegal?
Yeah.
If we make this
After
into a law?
that's precisely my question, Mr. President.
Yeah.
Paano
Because
ngayon yun?
then you are retiring or you are separating an employee because of age.
At saka pag-apply, Mr. President, if you're 40 years old, you can no longer apply.
Yeah, apart from that, when you are retired at, let's say, age 40 or whatever,
Yes.
then you are actually being separated from service because of age. And is that prohibited under this bill?
Yes, it is. But
But
Mr.
doesn't that
President, we don't
constitute
have but the intention of this bill is not retroactive, no? So they can use this by way of, because we will have to look into that, and I think we will have to see if we are carving something out, because there are existing cases. So let me rephrase my statement there, because there are existing CBAs and cases here. We will have to look if that is
Yes.
what we intended. In theory, that is my intention, that we rid ourselves of these discriminatory practices. As to what the effect of this on existing cases, let me hold my opinion on that for now.
Mr. President, there are jobs or line of work that should really be age sensitive. This is one, Mr. President. So if we have to find a way in this law, through this law, that we cannot remove that limit now of 40. Kasi the way it is crafted now, pagpasa nito, the way I understand it, Mr. President, is kahit 45 years old na nag-apply sa PAL, hindi pwedeng i-discriminate ng PAL. Pag pumasa ito, kailangan tanggapin nila yung application.
Yes.
And, di ba?
Yes.
Hanggang anong age? Any age? Hanggang 60.
Well, whatever the regular retirement age is, what we're saying is you cannot make your hiring or early retirement or firing decisions based on age.
Sa exceptions, Mr. President, will you not entertain the possibility of exempting certain work?
Definitely. That is actually the import, Mr. President, of Section 9A. But it is our position, and this is where I speak as an advocate for women, is that to include that as a requirement for flight attendants would redound to gender discrimination, because and I'm happy to.
But it's both male and female. It applies to both male and female, Mr. President.
Yes, but we know, Mr. President, and I will be happy to present the materials. I will photocopy it for the body. The general impression of flight attendants, especially when the industry of flying was very new, was to hire women who look like models. In fact, I have a whole case study in the U.S. where they were not allowed to get married. They were only hired for a very limited period, so that they do not get to the point where they will be married. They will be fired within a very short period of time. Because the intention was to have women who look like models and I guess look like they're 18 years old. But the reality is they are capable of doing their job whether they're 18, 28, 38, or 48. I leave it to the experts to tell me if at some point the manual labor there would prevent, whether it's a woman or a man, of performing that function after a certain age, but definitely not after 40. That's way too young. And we know that the basis for that is because they want women who look like they're 18. And that, to me, is a gender issue.
I hope you don't mind, but I'll try to think of a way or a suggestion on how to be able to get a better perspective of this particular provision and then the exceptions. No? Isa lang naman to eh. I don't know if there are other jobs that would be very sensitive about age na merong mga ganyan. May limitasyon. Meron bang limitasyon yung ibang mga jobs? Except the retirement age, of course. Ano?
Yeah. Sensitive to the age, that they should only be of a young age. What I'm told is understood to be an acceptable limitation are horse?
FA lang, di ba? Tsaka ano?
Race jockeys, yung sa kabayo.
Okay.
And also miners, mines, mga nagmamine.
Miners.
Minero, mga minero.
Yeah.
Mga minero.
Pilots, to the extent that eyesight related, because there's an age-related eyesight, a degeneration of one's eyesight. And I would think anything that has to do with the use of strength, but again, that is a little bit, that's why we wanted this to be settled in the level of the Department of Labor, because every industry would be different. And as you know, even in the practices in the military, and I am speaking more from U.S. experience because I've read documentation that has changed. In the past, women are not in the front line, and now women say they are equally capable and should be there. So in the U.S., they've changed the rules on that. I'm just using it as an example.
Let me ask then, did you consult the Age Discrimination in Employment Act of the United States? It was a 1967 law. Yes, there is an Age Discrimination in Employment Act of 1967 in the United States.
We actually looked at it, and a lot of the provisions there we used as a model.
Okay. In this particular question that we asked, how do they handle it?
In terms
Wala,
of the
ano?
exceptions. The
Huh?
exceptions.
Oh, the exceptions.
They also have. I think ours is similarly worded.
Kaya pwede yung may edad na sa sa mga FAs. Sa mga American Airlines, Mr. President. Well, so currently 40. Age, yung sa pala.
Yes, that is the going practice if hired after 2000.
Yung age yan, hindi waistline.
Age.
So
Yeah,
if the hiring took place today, what is the retirement age?
40. Because
40.
because hired after July 16, 2007. So anything.
Now, so what in effect the court did was to sustain the stipulation in the collective bargaining agreement. Is that a correct understanding?
That is. Yes, Mr. President.
Now, and that is only applicable in that particular employer and employee.
Yes, Mr. President. That's why I put on record that we are
alright.
discussing
Question.
the case of PAL.
If we pass this law, you can no longer retire. Let's say it involves another airline. You can no longer retire somebody at age. Let's say you have also a retirement plan saying that for some reason the flight attendant should be retired at age 45. That cannot, and the ordinary office employees is retired at age 65. That is a void policy once the law becomes effective. Let's say in XYZ airline,
Yes.
the flight attendant is retired at age 45. Okay, under their policy.
Yes.
They fund a retirement plan, 45 years old for flight attendants retiring. The office employees, retirement age 65. Now, will this law now render that policy void and in fact could subject the employer to criminal sanction?
Yes, that is the intention, Mr. President.
That is...
I know it is mind-boggling, but that is a practice that has been existing, which to my mind as an advocate and to many advocates like me, has always been a gender issue. And
no, it's not a gender issue. For all we know, Senator Pia, I hire all, as an airline personnel, I hire all male flight attendants. All right? And they should only retire them at age, let's say age 50. But the nature of their job is that they would want to be compulsorily retired at earlier 50, as against an office worker who can be retired because of a different set of circumstances at 65. Is that prohibited under this law?
Mr. President, the bill provides for exceptions. So if it falls within the exception in Section 9, then it won't be a violation. If there are valid reasons why at the age of 50 they should not be flight attendants, like for example, what's the difference between the work of a flight attendant and a pilot? If you tell me that, because they have to lift 30-kilo hand carry bags, then maybe that is a valid concern. Or because of the wear and tear on the body of being in the air. I have no problem with that, Mr. President. I am just basing my conclusion that the discriminatory practices that I believe are currently in place is because of gender old biases that the industry wants to have young, teenage-looking flight attendants. Because even, with any conversation I have with most men, they will always say, syempre gusto namin yung bata, yung flight attendant na mukhang batang-bata. I'm being candid about it. That's what men say, and that's what they want. And since I think there's still this view that and that may change also, that the general population of travelers are men, then that may also change. At some point, it may not even be a valid, that discriminatory practice may no longer have any reason to exist because the makeup of travelers is also changing. So there may be less resistance also on the part of employers. But I know for a fact, I hear it all the time na ang Asian Airlines yan ang panglaban kasi bata. That's because we allow the discriminatory practices. And in Europe and America, you see the older flight attendants. That is the reality. It hurts, but that is the reality.
Yeah, it is indeed a reality, Mr. President, and I even know for a fact that Eva Air. Have you tried riding the Eva Air? Eva Air, the FAs kneel down. So a young FA, an older FA would have
difficulty.
Yeah,
exactly.
They kneel down talking to you. They kneel down serving your food.
So if that is a requirement of the job, and a woman, and if they consider that a valid requirement, then that's an argument that the company can pose. I have an issue with that, but again, that's at this point, it's for the industry to.
Oh, the male FAs kneel
also
down
kneel.
also. Yeah. Well, by the way, anyway, Mr. President, let me go back to my small drawing board and suggest one or two amendments, especially on the exceptions. And,
we are very happy to accept. And when we resume, Mr. President, I will also bring the material that I've read, particularly about the documented discriminatory practices in the case of flight attendants. And I think I might have others also.
Yeah. So I wish to thank the distinguished lady, Mr. President, for her patience. And I thank the Senate President for his inputs, also the Majority Leader, who insisted that I ask about the waistline instead of the age. Anyway, thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you. I also thank the gentleman and the Senate President for the input. Thank you.
Majority Leader?
Mr. President, I move that we suspend consideration of the anti-age discrimination bill.
Any objection? Hearing none, consideration of Senate Bill number 29 or Committee Report number 38 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration. Well, move to suspend for 1 minute.
Session suspended.
Magtatanong ka ba doon? Hindi, kasi nakiusap.
Ayan, maganda.
I forgot to say this.
I was going to. Right? Session is resumed.
Mr. President, I move that we resume consideration of Senate Bill number 2055 under Committee Report number 12. This is the Forestry Profession Bill.
Consideration of Senate Bill number 2055 under Committee Report number 12 is in order.
Mr. President, may we recognize the sponsor, Senator Trillanes,
Senator Trillanes is recognized as the principal sponsor.
and to interpolate him is Senator Legarda.
For the period of interpellation, Senator Lauren Legarda is recognized.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
May I request the sponsor for some time to be able to interpolate on some pertinent matters, not to block the measure because I understand that this has been pending for more than a year, but to be enlightened and to further improve the measure, Mr. President.
Yes, Mr. President, this sponsor is very much willing to yield to the lady senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I understand that this is an amendment to the present forestry profession law. May I know, Mr. President, how old is a present law that we are amending, and why is there a need to amend this? For what purpose, and how will this improve the state of our Philippine forests and the state of our foresters, for that matter?
Thank you, Mr. President. This bill seeks to repeal RA 6239 to enact a more comprehensive law that will regulate the practice of forestry in our country. This is a 43-year-old law which was signed by then President Marcos on June 19, 1971. Since the enactment of RA 6239, the Forestry Profession Law of 1971, there have been a number of changes to the milieu as well as issues in which the forestry profession operate. The pressing concern of climate change aggravated by human-induced environmental destruction as well as natural calamities necessitates a major reorientation of this profession. And there are the specific amendments would include a more detailed and comprehensive definition of the scope of activities and services of the forestry profession, the deletion of the provision requiring area specialists in every area coverage of the foresters' licensure exam, the removal of the provision allowing registration of forestry professionals without examination, except in the case of foreign reciprocity, and so on and so forth, Mr. President.
Does this proposed measure, Mr. President, which includes amendments to the present 42-year-old forestry profession law, make it more stringent for a citizen, Filipino citizen, to become a forester, and therefore making him perhaps more competent to be a forester?
Most definitely, Mr. President, because the previous law allowed for the registration of forestry professionals even without examination. But this bill removes precisely that provision, and it further defined the scope of work of the forestry profession, Mr. President.
May I know, just for my information, Mr. President, how many forestry professionals do we have in the country today?
Based on the data that we have around 8,000 forestry professionals, Mr. President.
8,000 foresters in our country today. We have 30 million hectares in the Philippine archipelago. How do we distribute the 8,000 foresters among the 30 million hectares in the country, Mr. President? In short, in how many hectares of forest can we find one forester? And what is the ideal number of hectares per forester if we are to guard our forests?
This particular bill will not address the specific distribution or ratio or ideal ratio of foresters with our forests. However, this is supposed to encourage the students to enroll into forestry as a profession, as another profession so that we can increase the number of foresters, Mr. President.
May I know, I am certain that you have foresters there in the gallery with you. May I have the information on what is the ideal number of hectares to be guarded by foresters for us to be able to secure our forests, Mr. President?
5,000 hectares per forester.
5,000 hectares per forester.
Mr. President.
And would the good sponsor have the information on whether this is being followed today?
By how many? Right now, Mr. President, we are very short of the number of foresters. Just for DNR, the field positions for foresters number around 4,000, and the unfilled positions is at least 1,000 foresters, Mr. President.
And so how many are the unfilled positions for foresters in the DNR, Mr. President?
1,000.
1,000?
Yes.
Does it mean that we have an annual allocation of 1,000, but this is unused by the DNR for lack of personnel? Or is this an unfunded allocation, Mr. President?
If it's an unfilled plantilla position, these are funded.
Funded. Okay, that's a good
Mr.
input,
President.
Mr. President. As we deliberate on the budget in the coming months, as chair of the Environment Committee, I would like to know, in the past years, where have the 1,000, is that correct, plantilla unfilled positions of a DNR gone? Was this realigned? Was this returned to the budget? We're saying of the 4,000 allocated positions for foresters, there are still 1,000 unfilled.
Yes.
In the DENR.
Yes, Mr. President.
Yes.
And as far as this sponsor knows, it's included as part of the overall savings of the executive branch, which in the previous fiscal year formed part of the Development Acceleration Program, Mr. President.
May I know, Mr. President, how much is the average salary of a forester? A starting salary?
Around 18,000, Mr. President.
If he were to work for the government?
Yes, that's the entry level salary, Mr. President.
And if he were to work for the private sector, would that also be 18,000?
Around 20 to 25,000 for entry-level foresters in the private sector, Mr. President.
Mm-hmm. Would this bill, Mr. President, make it more attractive then? Would you have amendments that would increase the entry-level position for foresters, whether from the private sector or the government?
No, unfortunately, Mr. President, it's not included in the bill. This is a standard professional regulatory law that primarily included the foreign reciprocity clause, at the same time the provision for continuing professional education, and the designation of an accredited integrated professional organization, Mr. President.
Mm-hmm. May I know whether there is a model ASEAN country that pays its foresters and gives the best benefits available for its foresters, where we can model our forestry laws after, our forestry profession laws after?
Based on our information, Mr. President, ASEAN countries have adopted the Philippine forestry system. So we're actually the standards. We're setting the standards as far as this profession is concerned, Mr. President.
The Philippines has set the standards for forestry, for the forestry profession.
Yes, Mr. President.
May I know, Mr. President, is forestry still an attractive profession these days?
Well, based on the numbers, apparently this is a dwindling profession.
Looks like. Because
Yes.
when you talk to children, what would you want to be? They'll probably say a lawyer, a doctor, even a policeman, or even a teacher. But I would hardly ever hear that I want to be a forester.
I agree, Mr. President, and it's one of the objectives of this bill that to set the standards in CHED so that more courses for forestry could be offered to the different universities across the country, Mr. President.
Are our state universities equipped with the updated, upgraded knowledge on climate change adaptation and disaster resilience and measuring carbon footprints and knowing the kind of species in our forests perhaps which could be the best carbon sinks? In short, if our curriculum was based on age-old forestry profession laws 42 years ago, have our curricula been updated, or is it as antiquated as the forestry profession law?
Since there is no mandate coming from a new law, we should presume that they're still using the old curriculum, and that's precisely one of the objectives of this bill, Mr. President.
May I know whether the good sponsor would include it, or if not, would he be amenable towards an amendment where the educational curriculum of the would-be foresters would be an updated, upgraded curriculum to be attuned to the present needs of our times?
Yes, Mr. President. There is a provision here, Section 10, Paragraph F, that specifically describes the powers and responsibilities of the board, that is to promulgate the syllabi for the subjects in the licensure examination, and for the formulation of the curriculum for CHED, the upgraded curriculum for CHED. But this sponsor is very much willing to add on to what's already written here.
May I know, Mr. President, whether this board is already existing, or will this board be the byproduct of this bill?
It's existing, Mr. President.
But the mandate of the board will be expanded, will be improved under this proposed measure, Mr. President?
Yes, Mr. President.
May I know one striking, most important provision that will improve the mandate of the board, Mr. President? In fact, I'm very much interested to help you, Mr. President, in the amendment so that this board will be able to upgrade our curricula in various state universities, especially those that specialize in forestry, perhaps the UP Los Baños, for example. And also, we would like to know whether the schools and universities would actually teach natural capital accounting, for example, wealth valuation. Because when we measure our economic growth forecast, for example, or even our GDP, we never measure our natural wealth. And perhaps through the competence of our present foresters and the would-be foresters, we will be able to actually measure the wealth of our nation, not only through its human capital, but through our natural capital, which includes our waters and most especially our forests. So maybe that kind of competence must be developed of our foresters if it is not still readily available.
Yes, Mr. President. The one major addition to this particular bill is it prescribes and promulgates guidelines on the mandatory continuing professional education for foresters, in consultation with the accredited professional organization. So even after we have passed this, on the assumption that we were able to pass this bill into law, and 20 years thereafter, we won't need to amend it anymore because it's already incorporated there that any new methods, new knowledge for the forestry profession is automatically included in their continuing professional education, Mr. President.
I'm very much interested in that continuing education, and that's a very salient provision which indeed you must include in that proposed measure. May I know what are the forms of continuing education that our foresters can have access to?
Similar to other professions, ma'am, Mr. President, there are seminars and other training programs that are mandatory for registered foresters, and that they would need to go through so that they'd be able to renew their licenses, Mr. President. And it's the same provision that we have incorporated in all the professional regulatory laws that we have passed so far in the past two Congresses. It included the continuing professional education provision, Mr. President.
That's important, and I thank you for that. And I will be, I'm very supportive of this specific provision, as I am for the whole measure, Mr. President, because indeed continuing education is so important. And long after we're gone from this chamber, I would like to see the most competent foresters in our country who will guard the last remaining forests we have in our wealthy nation. May I also add that, Mr. President, perhaps in the improved curricula in the various academic institutions, we must just not only include the information or the competence for natural wealth accounting, but also foresters who would be able to identify risk assessments in the forest environment, because various environments, whether it is water or air or mountains, etc., would have various risks, as we all know. But foresters who just don't understand what tree planting means and what indigenous species would be suitable for what regions, but also what are the challenges and the risks in the various environments prevailing in our country and what to do with it. Because as we know, with the changing climate and extreme weather events, the situation on the ground literally has changed, and therefore even the way we treat our forests, the kind of trees we plant, because ang bagyo na dating nasa norte o sa Pacific Coast ay ngayon nagpupunta na sa Mindanao na dating walang bagyo. Sabi nga po nila, nung panahon ng bagyong Pablo, ang mga nakatayong puno ng coconut sa Region 11, like Davao Oriental, na hindi natitinag sa anumang hangin o bagyo dati dahil wala namang bagyo doon, ay nadala ng ilang kilometro dahil hindi sila sanay. Unlike the coconut trees, let's say, in the Bicol region, in the province of Albay. Again, these are anecdotal experiences. The foresters will be in the best position to validate what I've said. But I've heard those stories na hindi po ko na kami nakakaramdam at yung aming what's coconut tree in Tagalog? Yung aming punong nyug ay linipad po ng ilang kilometro. Ang nyug ay nyug, hindi ba? Ngunit ang nyug ng Bicol is perhaps more resilient than the coconut. But of course, this is not part of forestry, perhaps, because we're talking about coconuts, we're talking about agriculture. But what I'm saying is that whether it is a hardwood species, indigenous or not, because of a changing climate, perhaps we should also rethink what are the best species for what kind of climate, considering the changes in our weather patterns.
This sponsor so agrees with the senator from Antique, Mr. President, and it's true that because of because of climate change, there are certain weather patterns that may not be present before and should be considered by the foresters and even the experts from the agriculture department to consider even planting more resilient trees that are in areas that are prone to typhoons and other calamities, Mr. President?
In fact, I'm interested to find out. You may not have the information now, but may I kindly request from your panel of experts with you to submit to your committee, which you can share with this representation as chair of the Environment Committee, the best or the most resilient indigenous tree species. This is my keen interest because the National Greening Program is the flagship program of the Aquino administration. It is one of the many projects, but perhaps the most important project of the Department of Environment and Natural Resources. And I want to be able to cross-check with the information that you will provide me, along with the DNR's FMB, what they are doing with their NGP. If indeed the three species they are planting and producing in nurseries in various regions around the country are the correct ones based on the information that your foresters, your forestry experts will give your committee. Is that, are you amenable to that proposition, Mr. President?
This sponsor will comply to the request of the Lady Senator, Mr. President.
In fact, I would request that they read the National Greening Program. It's on a website, or they can get it from my office so that they can critique it, assuming they are not with the NGP, so that we can see how we can further improve the NGP, since we know it has a very big budget allocation every year.
Yes, Mr. President, the experts from the forestry profession will peruse over your the pet program of the Lady Senator, the National Greening Project, Mr. President.
Thank you for that, Mr. Sponsor. May I also know whether foresters at present, under the present forestry profession law, get hazard pay? We know that there are many hazards, both in terms of security, in terms of physical hazards, in terms of the difficulty in terrains, etc. Is there hazard pay? Just like teachers who work in far-flung areas must get hazard pay.
There are no
Ang kalaban ng ating mga forester, ang mga illegal loggers, ang mga marami po, ang mga masasamang tao sa mga liblib na lugar kung saan meron tayong mga puno. May I know whether the foresters have hazard pay?
Sadly, Mr. President, the foresters have no hazard pay.
At the proper time, would you be able to include that in your proposed measure, or is it not part of this regulatory? That is not included. That cannot be included in this bill.
Unfortunately, Mr. President, it will deviate from the spirit of this bill. Its focus is entirely different from the compensation part, Mr. President. But we can bring it up to the responsible agencies to consider the very valid observation of the Senator.
Mr. President, because an 18,000 entry level for a forester cannot be compared to an 18,000 of somebody who works in an air-conditioned office. Definitely, the forester must have hazard pay. The forester must be provided basic, even insurance, considering the environment in which he or she will be working in. Anyway, if it is not included within the mandate or the coverage or scope of your proposed measure, because that is in the Civil Service Committee, then perhaps in another venue or another bill, or through the PRC, we will be able to do this. I hope that I can receive your support for this and find out how we can include that. May I also know, Mr. President, what has happened to the cases of slain foresters that have been publicized in recent months, if not years?
Unfortunately, Mr. President, these cases remained unsolved, save for some that have been published in the newspapers, Mr. President.
I remember I went to the wake of a forester from UP Los Baños in Laguna. His family name, I believe, was Malinaw. He was a very dedicated forester, I believe, based on the information I received from Chancellor Rex Cruz, who is my good friend, who is a forester, who was one of the IPCCs, the International Panel of Climate Change, with Vice President Al Gore, and Professor Sargento of UP Los Baños, and many other friends from UPLBR foresters. One of their foresters was gunned down, if I'm not mistaken, in a court hearing he was attending while defending the forest in the conduct of his profession, and he was gunned down by who knows who in broad daylight in Laguna. I can't recall now which town, but I went to the wake of that forester. I do not know him, but I heard about it, and I was so angered, incensed, and saddened by this occurrence. Pinatay siya ng mga kinakasuhan niyang illegal logger sa kanyang pagprotekta sa makiling, sa kanyang pagtugon sa kanyang trabaho. Kaya, may I also ask, Mr. President, maybe not now if you don't have the information, the list of unsolved killings of foresters. And where are they? Are they in the courts? Just like our slain journalists, it just runs down in the number of statistics, growing in number, but still unresolved by the courts. And that pains my heart. Being a former journalist and foresters being the guardians of our forest, and they are just killed indiscriminately without justice being served.
I can understand the emotions that went through the lady senator, and it's quite unfortunate, and sadly we don't have any means to make sure that justice would be served in these particular cases. But as regards the request, along with the list of resilient trees, this sponsor will comply with the request of the senator.
So just to summarize, if you don't mind, and thank you for the kind indulgence of our kind sponsor, the critique on the National Greening Program and how to further improve it, if at all, if needed. And second, the best tree species to be planted in the various regions of our country, which is indigenous in nature. And third, the unresolved killings of our foresters. Mr. President, I came to this podium to seek enlightenment from the good sponsor and to reiterate my support for this measure. And at the time of the amendments, may this representation also provide, with your cooperation, the additional amendments to further improve the measure. And I support the good sponsor on this bill.
Thank you, Mr. President. This sponsor would be so honored to have the resident environment expert to go over our bill and to make it more responsive to the needs of the environment and our forests, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we close the period of interpellations.
Any objection? Hearing none, the period for interpellation on Senate Bill 2055 under Committee Report number 12 is hereby terminated.
Mr. President, I move to open the period for committee amendments.
The period for committee amendments is in order.
We recognize the chairman, Senator Trillanes.
Senator Trillanes is recognized.
Thank you very much, Mr. President. On page 1, section 1, line 4, delete the year 2013 and replace with 2014, Mr. President. I so move, Mr. President.
Any objection? Hearing none, amendment is carried.
On page 14, section 27, lines 1 to 9, delete the entire paragraph starting with the word no all the way to the word thereof, and in lieu, replace it with the following paragraph.
It's on page 14,
Yes, Mr. President.
line 9.
Section 27, lines 1 to 9.
Oh, lines 1 to 9. All right, sorry.
And replace it with the following paragraph, and I quote, "No foreign forester shall be given a certificate of registration / professional license and professional identification card or be entitled to any of the privileges under this act unless the country or state of which he is a subject or a citizen permits Filipino foresters to practice within its territorial limits on the same basis as the subjects or citizens of the said country or state." End of quote.
All right. The section 27 and foreign reciprocity are retained. It's just the paragraph itself that is being changed. Is that a correct assumption, Senator Trillanes?
Yes, Mr. President.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none, the amendment is carried.
On page 17, section 37, from lines 1 to 2, delete the phrase, "The chairperson of the PRC shall immediately include in the Commission's plans and programs the implementation of this act, the funding of which. In lieu thereof, insert the phrase, the amount necessary to implement the provisions of this act." I so move, Mr. President.
And how does the provision now read? If the whole sentence, how does it now read, Mr. Sponsor? For the record.
The amount, the new paragraph would read as follows. Section 37, appropriations. The amount necessary to implement the provisions of this act shall be included in the annual General Appropriations Act.
All right. Any objection? Hearing none.
That's all, Mr. President.
Majority Leader.
Mr. President, I move that we suspend or close the period of committee amendments.
Period for committee amendments terminated.
Senator Soto has indicated his desire to propose individual amendments, but not today. Am I correct? So, in the meantime, may we suspend consideration of Senate Bill number 2055 under Committee Report number 12.
Before the Chair acts on the motion of Majority Leader, Senator Soto.
We have no objection to the motion, but just for the record, without prejudice to the possibility of asking a few questions before we post the individual amendments, Mr. President.
Duly noted, yes.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Without any objection, the consideration of Senate Bill number 2055 is hereby suspended.
Mr. President, just a final administrative matter before we adjourn. On August 11, 2014, the Senate in plenary has approved the primary referral of proposed Senate Resolution number 824 with the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement, while secondary referral was made to the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture. So with the consent of the body, I move to switch primary and secondary referrals so that upon approval of the motion, the primary referral of proposed Senate Resolution number 824 shall be to the Committee on Education, Arts and Culture, and the secondary referral shall be to the Committee on Urban Planning, Housing and Resettlement. I so move, Mr. President.
All right. If the same is consistent with the rules, insofar as the jurisdiction of the committee is concerned, same is hereby approved.
Mr. President, I move that we adjourn session until 3 o'clock in the afternoon of Wednesday, August 13, 2014.
Session is adjourned until 3 o'clock of Wednesday, August 13, 2014.